let's bring it back now to one of our top stories. Facebook's independent oversight board upheld the company's decision to ban former President Donald Trump from its platforms. But the board also says that Facebook must review the decision within 6 months. Facebook suspended his accounts after the January 6th attack of the US Capitol by a mob of Trump supporters. Chris Bell is a professor of sociology and public policy and the founder of the Polarization Lab at Duke University. He's also the author of Breaking the Social Media Prism: How to Make Our Platforms Less Polarizing. Chris, great to have you with us. First, what do you make of this assessment from the Oversight Board?
Well, thanks so much for having me, Julia. You know, this is a landmark decision made by a blue chip panel of experts, legal experts, human rights leaders, and really it'll set the tone for a lot of decisions to come. And so I think really what the real big story here is a victory for this process, for people to come together and make rational decisions based on Facebook's own principles.
Is it a victory for the process? Because a lot of people coming into this were saying that whatever the decision, whether they decided to reinstate Trump or they decided to uphold the ban, you have a very polarizing situation where critics will say, hey, this is suppression of free speech. And those that like the decision would say, you know, President Trump shouldn't have the power that he had with accusations of misinformation and whatever else we want to discuss. Is part of why you're happy with this the fact that they've said, look, we want the 6-month review here? And I can quote from the statement: it was not appropriate for Facebook to impose the indeterminate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension. They're trying to please all sides.
This is certainly not the end of the story. But, you know, we were polarized long before Donald Trump. We'll be polarized long after Donald Trump. And I think we have to ask the deeper questions of how did we get here? You know, how did we allow ourselves to become so polarized, and what role does social media more broadly play in that process?
Aha. You've asked the question that I was going to ask, so please answer your own question. How did we get here, and what are the questions that we should be asking? Because it's not actually just about social media, and it's not just about Donald Trump.
Right. So, I mean, everybody wants to think that Facebook or Twitter have some kind of magical button that they can flip deep inside their source code and make all of this go away. And I really wish that were true. But as a researcher, you know, when we've scrutinized the ability of Facebook to really make far-reaching decisions for the rest of us, what we discover is that most of the things that we think matter a lot, things like echo chambers, misinformation, algorithms, seem to have very minimal effect. And really what's creating the polarization is us. It's driven by we, the social media users.
So you're saying that the algorithms that mean that people on social media tend to interact and engage with people of similar and like-minded views isn't part of what's fueling extremist views and misinformation? It's simply not what you're finding when you're doing the research?
Yeah, you know, surprisingly few people are actually in political echo chambers. The latest research indicates the bigger problem is the growing gap between social media and reality. So, you know, right now, 73% of tweets about politics are generated by just 6% of Twitter users. And that 6% of Twitter users has very extreme views. And this makes all of us feel much more polarized than we really are. So we have to ask the questions, why are extremists incentivized to spread, you know, extreme views? And why are moderates, you know, disengaging?
Or could we also ask the question of why a Twitter or a Facebook doesn't just identify those 6% of individuals and lock them down?
Well, I mean, this is an extraordinarily difficult task. I mean, it's taken 4 months from a blue chip panel of 30 of the world's leading experts and $130 million to get us here. Now, obviously, every decision won't be as big as this decision about Trump, but stamping out extremism is really like a game of whack-a-mole. You know, trolls are going to continue to pop up, and there's going to be an ongoing challenge among social media platforms to figure out principles that not only work in the US, but around the world. So this problem is not going away anytime soon.
So what we're saying is, and I think what you're arguing is actually the majority of us aren't extreme. We actually don't have incredibly strong political views. We don't want to engage in uncivil behavior and activity online. So how did the majority overtake and rule the minority?
Well, let's think about it. Why do we use social media? For a lot of people, it's to gain a sense of status, you know, to gain a powerful sense of belonging, especially for people who are social outcasts in their everyday life, right? But many other people derive status in other ways, you know, through their job, their family, and their friends. And so for those people, engaging in political debates is a liability. For extremists, it's a kind of micro celebrity. And so we have to think about shifting the incentives that generated this problem and look to new kinds of technology to fix the problem.
How?
Well, I think there's two things we can do. The first is all social media users can learn to see what I call the social media prism, the distortion between social media and reality. And we can do that in a few ways. We can use technology, middleware technology, plugins that we've created in the Duke Polarization Lab that would allow your viewers to kind of identify extremists for what they are and learn how to avoid them. But more importantly, boost moderation. So we maintain a bipartisanship leaderboard where your viewers can go and see this small but growing group of people, politicians, journalists, media figures, who are really resonating across the aisle. They're getting likes from both Republicans and Democrats. And we've also made bots to boost these things too. So we need tech to kind of help us boost moderates and tamp down the extremism.
And what role do the social media giants play in that, whether it's a Facebook or a Twitter, for example? Because there will be many people watching this interview going, hang on a second, they can do more. They rake in billions of dollars every year. They can boost moderation. They can ultimately do more. And just handing off the responsibility to an oversight board is a dereliction of duty in some way.
You're absolutely right, Julia. There is a lot that social media platforms could do. One recommendation, which I would love to see enacted tomorrow, is to create different kinds of incentives. Right now, we're rewarded for preaching to the choir. The more extreme things we say, the more likes and new followers we tend to get. What if the rankings that are used, the algorithms that are used to determine the order in which information appears in our news feeds, promoted content that is resonating across political divides or across, all sorts of social divides? Let's boost the information that lots of different types of people find useful or engaging instead of allowing us to kind of, really only speak to our side.
I love that idea. But I guess it also depends on consumer preferences and human behavior as well. Chris, great to have you with us. We can debate this much more, and we certainly will again soon. Thank you, Chris. Chris Bell.
Absolutely.
Professor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Professor of Sociology and Public Policy at Duke University there.